The president of Guyana, and Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, sealed an agreement to resolve the territorial dispute of the Essequibo in accordance with the 1966 Geneva Agreement and international law. Local media in Palestine reported that Israeli occupation forces killed more than 50 civilians, mostly children and women, in Khan Yunis and Rafah localities. And Hungary vetoed the 50 billion euros promised by the European Union to Ukraine, as assured by the Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Rosabal from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. With a handshake in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the president of Guyana, and Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, sealed an agreement to resolve the territorial disputes over the Essequibo in accordance with the 1966 Geneva Agreement and international mechanisms. The head of state held a high-level meeting brought by the president of Brazil, Lula da Silva, and the prime minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Rafa Gonçalves, with several facilitators, including the president of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, Roosevelt Scarrett. In addition, the heads of the governments of the Caribbean were present, and representatives of several governments of the region also attended. All the parties reiterated in the agreement about ties of the Argyle Agreement their commitment to Latin America and the Caribbean, remain a region of peace, and addressing the Essequibo issue through a dialogue. As part of the date of dialogue between the governments of Guyana and Venezuela on the territorial disputes, Rafa Gonçalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, assured that both nations are committed to not using force to resolve the disputes over the Essequibo region.
Guyana and Venezuela declared as follows. 1. Agreed that Guyana and Venezuela directly or indirectly will not threaten or use force against one another in any circumstances, including those consequential to any existing controversies between the two states. Agreed that both states will refrain, whether by words or deeds, from escalating any conflict or disagreement arising from any controversy between them. The two states will cooperate to avoid incidents on the ground conducive to tension between them.
Rafa Gonçalves also noted that the two states agreed to meet again in Brazil in the next 3 months.
Agreed that any controversies between the two states will be resolved in accordance with international law, including the Geneva Agreement dated February 17, 1966. Both states agreed to meet again in Brazil within the next 3 months or at another agreed time to consider any matter with implications for the territory in dispute, including the above-mentioned update of the Joint Commission.
The president of Venezuela, after arriving in Venezuela from the dialogue with the president of Guyana, expressed that it has been worthwhile to defend the truth of Venezuela and to see the diplomacy of the peace as the path of dialogue.
It has been worthwhile to defend the truth of Venezuela, to raise the flag of truth, to raise our historical reasons, and to seek with the Bolivarian diplomacy of peace the path of dialogue, of understanding, to manage the historical controversy as it should be through the path of dialogue, as it is the title of this agreement.
In this sense, Venezuelan president thanked his counterpart from the Republic of Guyana, Irfan Ali, for his willingness to engage in dialogue.
I thank the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Mohamed Irfan Ali, for his openness and for his willingness to engage in a broad dialogue on all the issues that we were able to address directly. I could say that I was pleased to be able to meet face-to-face with the President of Guyana, as I had wanted to do for a long time.
In Argentina, the government of the ultra-conservative Javier Milei announced on Thursday a tightening of the security policy against free protests after his shot therapy measures triggered reaction from unions and social organizations. The Minister of Security, Patricia Bullrich, announced that all the police forces are called to act against police demonstrations, including roadblocks, pickets, and blockades. The decision allows the police to increasingly use force until roads are freed from protesters. Bullrich also said costs involved in the police operations will be billed to the demonstrators. The minister also informed that penalties ranging from 3 months to 2 years in prison will be submitted for approval for those who obstruct land, sea, or air transportation. The announcements were made 2 days after the administration's decision to reduce its fiscal deficit through currency devaluation, laid-off of public employees, reduction of subsidies for transportation and energy, and the suspension of infrastructure development.
The 4 federal forces, plus the Federal Penitentiary Service that has joined this ministry, are going to intervene against road cuts, pickets, or blockades, whether partial or total. The law is not half complied with. The law is complied with, or it is not complied with. We're going to comply with it fully. All costs linked to security operations will be billed to the responsible organizations or individuals participating in these protests. The state will not pay for the use of the security force. Organizations with legal status will have to pay, or individuals will have to pay for the cost of the operations.
On Thursday in the United States, local media in the state of Houston announced that a high school teacher was arrested for threatening a 13-year-old Muslim student. The Houston County Sheriff's Office said that Benjamin Reese, a 51-year-old 7th grade social studies teacher at the Warner Robins High School, was arrested on December 8th after several witnesses told authorities that he threatened to behead a 13-year-old student who said she was offended by the Israeli flag hanging in her classroom. The report also updated that the teacher posted a bail of $2,500 on the terrorist threat charge of $5,000 at cruelty to children charge. It should be noted that Benjamin Reese is free on bail. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you find news in different formats, your dates, and more. Other studies coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. On Friday, local media in Palestine reported that Israeli occupation forces killed more than 50 civilians, mostly children and women, in Khan Yunis and Rafah localities. The report highlighted that Zionist artillery directly hit family homes. On the other hand, in Deir al-Bala and Nuseirat, numerous Zionist attacks were also reported with deaths and injuries. According to local authorities, the hunt for Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas leader whom Israel holds responsible for the October 7th operation, will be the cause of these operations. The government of Washington, Israel main ally, assured on Thursday that Sinwar's days were numbered. In Palestine, Israeli forces have killed more than 3,669 students in the West Bank and Gaza after bombing nearly 278 schools in the area. The Palestinian Minister of Education reported on Thursday that at least 82 Palestinian students had been kidnapped in the West Bank since the beginning of the Israeli attacks last October 7th. The ministry also detailed in the report that more than 200 teachers and administrators have been killed and 619 wounded in the Gaza Strip, while 2 teachers were wounded and more than 65 were detained in the West Bank. The report also revealed that out of the center of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, 65 schools and 278 government schools were hit by the Zionist forces shelling. The report further revealed that of these centers, 75 were disabled due to total damage to infrastructure. 268 were partially damaged, while in the West Bank, 38 educational centers were hit. A program of the United Nations announced on Friday that the siege of the Zionist army in Palestine is condemning thousands of Gazans to a terrible famine. According to the report, 9 out of 10 citizens in Gaza have nothing to eat. Carl Scu, Deputy Director of the United Nations World Food Programme, said the situation is desperate. Scu added that the occupation army's constant and indiscriminate bombardments is preventing the effective distribution of humanitarian aid. The population of Gaza is facing daily armed attacks and forced displacement, which, according to the report, has put the population at risk of starvation and serious disease. A senior official with the militant Palestinian group Hamas laid down Thursday Israel attempts to flood the group's tunnels in Gaza, saying when militants built them, they took all consideration of what could happen. Osama Hassan's comments in Beirut came 2 days after a U.S. official confirmed that Israel has begun flooding Hamas tunnels in the Gaza Strip. Israel said that they are testing the targeted flooding of the tunnels on a limited basis and are exploring the idea of one of a range of options to degrade the tunnel network. Haman said that the tunnels were built by well-trained engineers who have taken into consideration all possible attacks by Israel, even pumping water. Speaking about President Joe Biden's warning Israel was losing international support because of an indiscriminate bombing of Gaza, Handan said these statements are an American acknowledgement that what is happening is a war crime. The health situation in hospitals in the Palestinian city of Jenin worsens amid escalating Israeli aggressions against the governorate for the third consecutive day. The health minister reported on Thursday that the health situation in Jenin is difficult due to the attacks of the Israeli occupation force against hospitals and their staff. The governmental health body said it was keeping a close eye on the health centers to check the condition of the wounded and their medical needs. In this regard, they stressed they are doing their best to provide doctors to all hospitals in the governorate despite the conditions in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, the death toll has risen to 18,984 and the injured to over 55,000 according to the latest report of the ministry. In Palestine, authorities reported that hundreds of Gazans followed the humanitarian aid truck that crossed the Rafah border, crossing on Thursday to collect supplies. The citizens' action follows the statements by the Israeli regime that it will continue its attack on the Palestinian enclave. Meanwhile, the international community continues to call for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. We have a second show break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on the screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final show break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Finland, the Central Organization of Trade Unions joining workers' strike resulted in a total shutdown of the public transport throughout the country. Public service workers are protesting against the government's labor reforms and social costs. This in the face of failed negotiation between the United Nations and the states. So far, commercial vehicle drivers, all workers, as well as tourism and railway workers have joined the strike. The Chinese government on Friday rejected the intention of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to expand into the Asia-Pacific region. The spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Minister Mao Ning asserted that this could only lead to confrontation between blocs and regional stability. Mao Ning supported recent statements of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who denounced the Western bloc's intention to extend NATO's activities to the Asian region. She further stressed that China and Russia are developing bilateral and cooperative relations in various fields on the basis of mutual respect, equality, and common benefits, which has brought tangible benefits to the two peoples and has played a positive role in promoting common development and progress in the world. On Thursday, Hungary vetoed the €50 billion promised by the European Union to Ukraine, as assured by the Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. At a meeting of the European Community held in Brussels, the Hungarian leader reiterated his disagreement with the aid to Kiev as well as its incorporation into the community bloc. In the meantime, the acting Dutch Minister Mark Rutte tried to reassure the Ukrainian government, assuring that next year they will reach an agreement. The government of President Volodymyr Zelensky is dependent on European funding because the U.S. lawmakers who were supposed to approve a system for Kiev are on a break on holiday. In Albania, opposition lawmakers interrupted the opening of a new parliamentary session to demand that the government be investigated for alleged corruption. The riots started in October before prosecutor charged Sali Berisha, president and now senior leader of the center-right Democratic Party, with corruption. The opposition said it is seeking to set up a parliamentary commission of inquiry to address alleged corruption cases involving senior government officials. Meanwhile, government authorities announced that the actions of the opposition parties are unconstitutional. The United States has established communications with the military junta ruling Niger to inform them that it's ready to begin negotiations and recognize them as a country formal government. After numerous threats and pushing for a regional confrontation against its West African nation, Washington has backed down. Ali Mohamed Lamine Saint, Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs at the State Department, confirmed meetings with several members of the ruling junta and the transitional government. Washington wants to impose a roadmap, and the military junta has only responded with the one is set for a maximum 3-year transition period before handing over to a civilian government. The head of Haiti's National Police, France Elbe, is in Kenya to finalize the operation that will deploy the multinational force led by the African country in that Caribbean nation. The police chief met in Nairobi, the country's capital, with the Inspector General of Police, Yabed Kam. And according to the authorities, a senior Haitian official will make a 3-day visit to learn details of the deployment operation. Despite support from the United Nations and Washington, the project is widely opposed by the Haitian people, and human rights organizations claim it will generate more violence and few solutions. In Kenya, floods caused by rains leave at least 170 dead and more than 600,000 displaced in several areas of the country. The Kenyan army reported that they are carrying out operations to evacuate hundreds of people trapped by the disaster generated in the rains in the provinces. The authorities indicate that the areas most affected by the floods are in the north of the country, where tens of thousands of people lost their homes, livestock, and farmland. Also, the nation's meteorological department warned that the rains will continue during the next year, 2024, and issued an alert to people living in landlands to evacuate the area to avoid further losses.
My kitchen has collapsed. The flood water is all over. The previous week, I stayed in a school, and this week, I have been here. My bed is in a bad shape. You have seen my kitchen and my entire home. I am also raising orphans, so I urge the government to help us.
We don't have food, that's our main problem. We don't have mosquito nets, we have nothing to sleep on, and there are snakes. We are complaining because there is a woman who gave birth without medical help, and an old woman broke her arm and there was nobody to treat her. When a child suffers, they ask their father for help. We are asking our government for help.
The National Institute of Meteorology of Brazil announced a new heat wave that is hitting a large part of the country. Specialists indicated that the temperature increase will be less intense than of the last November, settling at 5 degrees above average for a few days. The heat forecast includes 7 states along with the federal districts until December 20. And we have come to the end of this brief, but before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience from Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share newscasts and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these, some of the stories on our website at TeleSURenglish.net, and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Ana Rosabal. Thank you for watching.